only happen in love relationships? Or can it happen in other types of relationships, even a friendship? You're listening to Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse, and I'm your host, Dr. Carrie McAvoy. This is the kind of questions we're going to be dealing with in this episode. Don't forget to leave a review and subscribe, and we appreciate your contribution. Hey, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so appreciated seeing you here. Today, we're going to jump in and talk about everything related to narcissistic abuse. I'm so happy to have you guys here. You know, I want to start out with something kind of vulnerable to share. I've been thinking a lot about the trauma bond, how very difficult it is to break, and how much pain, how much agony we feel as we try to separate from somebody that we have basically built a life with, we have created a future with, and even had dreams about. I had a dream last night. It was a really painful dream. And as a psychologist, one of the things I do is dream interpretation. So I've been sitting on it, trying to make sense of what this dream was saying to me. And in the dream, I was with a group of people, and they said that there would need to be a choice, that I would have to lose possibly the lives of one of my sons in order to save something else. And I don't know what the something else was, but it was so critical. I felt that I had no choice. And I said yes, but hoped for the best, hoped that it wouldn't cost me that much, even though I knew that it could. I rushed back after this event occurs, and sure enough, my oldest son is gone. He's nowhere to be found. I'm heartbroken. And I keep asking, what happened? And no one will tell me what happened. I keep looking for where he's at and evidence of something that would tell me what happened to him. Was he dead, truly dead? No one would tell me. They said they decided it was best that I never know. I woke up in agony and I burst into tears, and I needed to know what happened. I knew it was such a huge cost. It cost me everything, and I needed to know what happened. So I've been sitting on that, thinking about, what does this mean? What is this telling me about myself? And it hit me that when we get into a relationship with somebody who is, we go all in. We imagine this is the person that we're going to spend the rest of our lives with, that this is the one, we found the one. And then we find out things that we didn't know when we agreed to get into the relationship with this person. The deception, the lies, the manipulation, and even maybe the betrayals that have gone on in this relationship. And we realize that in order to get out, it's going to cost us something. It's going to cost us something really dear. But we don't have a choice. We lose ourselves, and it costs us our very lives, our sanity, or it will cost us something else to get out. So we make a decision and we get out, and we get on the other side of it. We don't even get the benefit of closure. We don't even get to know what happened the way it happened, and why us, and why they did this to us, and why didn't they choose us? Why did they even ask us into the relationship? We don't get the benefit of any of those answers, and it leaves a lot of us in agony. Back when I was counseling, I'm a psychologist with over 20 years of clinical experience, and one of the clients I saw had been in a long-term relationship with someone, and he suddenly walked out. And she pleaded with him to please tell him why he walked out. And he said, think about it. You'll figure it out. She said to me, she looked at me, I have no idea what he's talking about. I can't figure it out. I don't know what he means. There's never been a big issue in our life. What does he mean? I can figure it out if I sit there. You know, and I hate to say this, but back in the day when I was seeing clients, this is back in the early 2010s, I didn't know about narcissistic abuse. I knew he'd given her a super shitty answer, and I knew it had left her in intense agony, but I didn't have any big solution for her. I wish I could have told her, honey, that was a terribly abusive thing that he's done to you. You were just experienced lack of closure from someone that lacked the courage to own up to their portion of the relationship. So let's jump in. Let me tell you who I am for those of you who've never been on one of my lives before. I'm Dr. Carrie McAvoy. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I have over 20 years of counseling experience. I closed my practice in 2015 when I was widowed after a 31-year marriage, and then I ended up marrying a severe narcissist. He was actually a narcissistic sociopath. Was in a devastating relationship knew him for 3 years. I was married to him for 2. I actually just wrote a book about it. It came out in February called Love You More. I have to brag for a minute, guys. This book is topped in the top 100 of Amazon's bestsellers for several categories. It's right now in the top audiobook on the abuse, in domestic partner abuse. It's also hit the top 100 for true crimes. So if you're looking for a thriller, but also there's a true story, the name of the book is called Love You More. Love You More, The Harrowing Tales of Lies, Sex Addiction, and Double Cross. So so I share in a very vulnerable way exactly what happened to me about narcissistic abuse, so that if you want to know that it can happen to anyone, it can happen even to a psychologist, because they use cult-like programming to pull us into a relationship, and it's devastating. So you kind of see how troubled I am, how much cognitive dissonance I have. Let's with that, while I wait for someone to put one of their questions in the interact button, let's talk about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Actually, I think their relationship is highly toxic. A lot of classic narcissistic abuse. I know that Amber's been diagnosed as histrionic personality disorder, which is one of the cluster B personality disorders. So that includes narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, as well as histrionic personality disorder and borderline personality disorder. One of the things that's kind of interesting about these conditions, and if you pay attention to Sam Vaknin's lectures on YouTube, it's Vaknin, Sam Vaknin. He wrote the book Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. Excellent lecturer on this. He knows a lot about it. He's coined a lot of the terms in narcissistic abuse. You know, he will say, he's one of the first to say that a lot of these cluster B disorders actually fluctuate in and out. So you can have, for example, be a borderline personality disorder and then also at times behave narcissistic and other times behave like an antisocial personality disorder. So they kind of fluctuate back and forth. We don't know as much about histrionic because we don't talk about it a lot, but I see a lot of very classic gaslighting, minimization. She's very provocative. I definitely think Johnny Depp was abused by her. I have a feeling that the abuse he gave her was probably reactive abuse. You know, there's that clip that came out about her calling him a name and, you know, confronting him about the way he hit her. So that I can see how she's provoked him. I have a feeling that both of them are not easy people to be in a relationship with, and I'd say they both have a long history of being in traumatic, manipulative relationships. So, and I don't know whether or not he's going to win or lose, but I think certainly in the public's eye, he's won a lot. He's won a lot of approval from us, a lot of sympathy from us. How do you support someone going back to the abuser? And I know this is a common issue that comes up and people struggle with it. I actually lost relationships when I went back. I did separate for a month, and then I ended up going back. I have reasons. If you read my story, you'll realize it was for a lot of complex reasons. Not everything I would have felt comfortable sharing with the general public, but I lost relationships. People actually blocked me for taking that step. So what is happening? Why do people do that? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and one is that it's leaving a person who's a narcissistic, and by the way, we're all on the spectrum from mildly with few symptoms all the way to massively pathological. And the reason is because the core issues of narcissism is, do you understand me? Is there attunement? Can you relate with what I'm going through? And the other issue is, and am I special to someone? We all have these innate needs that are part of our developmental process, but for some of us, they go pathologically wrong to the point that we fail to see other people as real people. We treat people as objects instead of person. When we end up in the far end of narcissistic pathology, that's what happens. So when you're at that far end, when that starts to happen, It's all about management of risk. You're saying, I don't feel safe in the world. People don't see me. They don't treat me right. So I'm going to pursue it relentlessly from everyone in the world around me. And they're not real people because I don't recognize them that way. I'm kind of broke that way. And so as a result, I'm going to use them to get what I need, hopefully. Well, unfortunately, when that happens is then they sort of view the world competitively and they have extreme jealousy and envy. In fact, if you look at the DSM-5, envy and jealousy is one of the 9 criteria that you need to see at least 5 in order to diagnose someone with narcissistic personality disorder. So when you see the world competitively, that means you see it with there's winners and there's losers. And you obviously don't plan to be the loser. So you're going to do everything that you can in order to win. So that means you're basically at war with everyone, including your partner. And what do we do when we're at war with someone? Well, we make it very hard for people to leave. We will do anything that we can in order for us to come out on top. Those of us who've been in an abusive relationship, they threaten us. They leverage things. There's actually emotional blackmail that's going on. If you walk out on me, I'm going to unalive myself. Or if you walk out on me, I'm going to make everybody knows what you've done to me. Or if you walk out on me, I'm going to take everything that I can from you, or I'll tie you up in court for forever. And you know what? We know they mean it. These people, to them, there is no end to something. They're ruthless. They will do whatever they can to pursue. We often think in relationships that we follow certain guidelines, that there are limits and we're civil, we're hospitable. But with these individuals, there's no hospitality. There's no I can't say that word today. They're not civil. So they will do whatever they have to do in order to come out ahead. So when you leave, it's going to cost you. Back to the dream that I shared with you at the start of this live, that I knew in the dream it was going to cost me something more than I could afford, and then I ended up doing that. So as a result, it's very hard to leave because they start to carry it out. And here's the other thing. How many of us end up thinking, well, it's better with the devil that I know than the devil that I don't. If it's going to be so bad, can I survive the other side? So we don't. We end up staying thinking, at least I know the rules here. He's not easy or she's not easy, but I at least know how to manage this. If I leave, what then? Will they ever let me go? This person has hurt me now. How much more will they hurt me when they are furious and relentless? So as a result, and then they actually begin to do it. So that's why people come back. And there's I don't know if this is research based or not, but it's been proposed that most people take a minimum of 7 tries to leave, 7 efforts to leave. So back to the question. What do we do when we know somebody who's gone back and we know that they're making a bad decision? We really want them just not to do that, to stick it out. What I would recommend is that you be a friend, that you stick around and that you don't make judgments on this, that you say, this is what someone said to me that was the most supportive thing they could have ever said. They said, I want you to know that I'm a safe space for you. You can come and tell me anything and I will never judge you for it. And I know that you're in a rough experience. I tell you, that person was somebody that I knew that I could go to in the future, and I did. I could lean into that person, and they helped me make the decision to eventually leave. So that's the best thing that you could do. If you're in one of these abusive relationships, or you're a friend of somebody who's in an abusive relationship, support them. Don't judge them, support them. Because one thing is, there's probably a lot they're not telling you. A lot of the inside stuff that is horrific, that is terrifying them. And they're living under enormous stress, the stress that it's really hard to relate to unless you're in it. I honestly, I have really good cognitive empathy. I can put myself in other people's position. But it wasn't until I had this happen to me, I feel like my eyes are opened. I am horrified what people are going through in these relationships, literally horrified. Great question. Thank you for asking me that. So what is a histrionic disorder? Histrionic disorder is one of the cluster B personality disorders in the DSM-5. What is a personality disorder? A personality disorder is something that has to do with who you are as a person. It's the way you love and relate to others. It's how you handle emotions, relationships, and your work life. Women tend to be more borderlines. Men tend to be more narcissistic. That is a whole nother topic. Why is there gender differences? Is it fair? Is there discrimination? Is it cultural? I mean, there's all sorts of things that we could get into about why that is. What's a good way to respond to gaslighting? Well, gaslighting, just for you, those of you who don't for sure what gaslighting is, because there's a lot of misuse of gaslighting. So gaslighting is not saying that we don't like something someone else has to say. You know, if they said to you, what you said to me really upsets me, that's not gaslighting. You may not want to hear it, but it's not gaslighting. Gaslighting is actually when you are distorting the truth on someone. It's a way to avoid problem solving or conflict, and you make the person the issue instead of the issue. So say, for example, someone says, how come you didn't take the trash out? We missed it last night. The gaslighting would be to say something like, why are you always on me? You can't let anything go. You just harp on stuff. What is the issue with you? See, the issue is why did you miss the garbage last night? There is no answer to that. The person bypassed the question to attack the person. The point of gaslighting is to maintain control. It's also to make the other person feel crazy, stupid, or confused. So what do you do when it's happening? The best way to do it, I have found the best way to handle it is to revert back to the issue. So to say, we're not talking about me. If you'd like to talk about how I handle issues, let's bring it up another time. And then say, I'd like to know what happened. Can we come up with a better plan around taking the garbage out? And then usually people who are gaslighting will attack again and attack again. But a way to kind of stop it is to ignore the attacks, don't get hooked, and repeat the question. I'd like to find a better way to handle taking the garbage out. I'd like to find a better way. You just keep saying it over and over. They don't deal with repetition very well. So you keep stating it over and over is going to diffuse the situation and cause them to sort of be befuddled and stop it. I had it happen to me. I give you an example, and it's kind of later part of the book. I discovered that my ex is texting somebody he's not supposed to, a girlfriend of his. I catch him texting, and I said, who are you texting? And he says, I'm not texting anyone. Yeah, you were texting someone. And then he ended up saying, you make a big deal about everything. Who are you texting? You're texting someone. I'm not talking about it. Well, it was like that. And if you read the example, you kind of see how I just kept on the point. You're texting. He even went so far as, I'm sorry that I upset you. I said, you didn't upset. He said, I'm sorry that you saw me texting someone and that was upsetting. I said, no, what was upsetting is that you broke the rules, who you're texting. You have to in other words, the way through it is to find the main point and hold the main point. Don't lose the line of thread of whatever it is that you're talking about. That's a way to sort of break it apart. It's difficult. It's crazy making. It's upsetting. I know for me, I found it extremely difficult to resist being hooked. But if you can keep the thread and focus on that, that's a great way through it. Then the bigger question we're not talking about is what to do about the relationship, because people who consistently gaslight are people who are not safe. So, there's that whole issue too. What do you call a family member who's purposefully upsetting you? Well, I would be curious what the reasons were. Are they somebody that just always needs to create drama and it's the way for them to be the center of the attention? Or is there an issue that's being ignored and they're going back to it because they're not getting the attention or their needs are not being met? I would want to know why. One of the things I learned about people in general, and I thought this is a really good rule of thumb, even the most irritating symptom that we see from someone, it still has an adaptive reason. In other words, it's an effort to resolve something. It may not be a good way. It may be very immature. It may be super irritating. But if you can see it as a message that you're trying to address, it's very helpful for you then to say, okay, if this keeps coming up, what is it that they're trying to get? What is the need here that's not being addressed? That might be a way for you to be able to end this problem. Just a thought. Can a narcissist turn people against the other people? Absolutely. Absolutely. Here's the thing about narcissists. They generally are very charismatic, magnetic people. Have you noticed that? They have a lot of charisma, And they're often very good at being likable. And since they wear a mask, they adopt your interests and hobbies, and they kind of mimic you. So they make you feel, and when they're talking to you, you feel like you're like sometimes the only person in the room. Imagine then that they take that charm and they use it as a way to work it against you. And they'll do it really subtle. See, they become masterful at understanding how to manipulate people. One of the things I'm going to be doing a video series on is mind mapping. Have you ever heard of mind mapping or the theory of mind? They talk a lot about with autism, but it actually also is very applicable to all of us. We all mind map. It's different than empathy. And that's one of the things I want to talk about in a video. Mind mapping is when you begin to understand the motives and drives of another person in order so that you can interpret their behavior and make guesses about them. Empathy is when we actually can do that and then care about it. Empathy is to imagine and have sensitivity about what it would be like to be this person. But mind mapping is just to have a sense of being in someone else's head, what motivates them. And as a result of that, they're very good at setting, because again, go back to what I said about them, they see the world as at war and they need to protect themselves at all costs. So as a result, they're going to then use every strategy they can in order to give themselves advantage. And one of them is to always have a good image, stay on top. So if something's going wrong, they're going to get ahead of it in order to show everyone else that it wasn't them, they're the good guy or the good woman. And so they're going to anticipate how you're going to come out and start to talk about this. And as a result, then they prepare, they set the environment up for you to say whatever you say. So the minute you say it, they anticipate it. And as a result, then you look kind of like idiot, like if you say he was really mean, they already said, she's just very hard to please. And she said a lot of times that I wasn't supportive and she'd even accuse me of being mean. So the minute then you say it, they're like, psst, there you go. You stepped into the trap and now you've supported their theory and you create people that turns people against you. And then you end up wondering, what did you say? You think you're telling the truth. Well, you are telling the truth, but you don't realize they've already set the stage for you. They've already set the trap for you. So yes, if that was a long ass answer to say, yes, they can certainly turn people against you. But here's the thing. So let me leave you with some encouragement. This is what I've had to do. Anybody who's willing to listen to them and be involved and risk that and take their word over you, they're not somebody who really is authentically in your corner or know you very well. I would sort of say, yeah, it hurts to have that loss, but take it as it's maybe protective. This person if they're that easily turnable, then they've not really been that sincere of a friend to you or family member. I know it's really painful and I know it's unfair and wrong, but yeah, that's one way to sort of see it. But yes, they're very good at that. Can friendships be narcissistic? Absolutely. Yeah, any time that there's people involved, there can be narcissism. I've seen institutions be narcissistic. I've had friendships that have been very narcissistic. You could have a workplace that's narcissistic, like a boss or a department behave very narcissistically. You can have neighbors that will create problems. In fact, I was talking to somebody about a condo association, and there was somebody that's very narcissistic in that association, and she was talking about how she just made every meeting, every new amendment a living hell. She would just create chaos for this association as she fought and just made it difficult. So narcissism is actually just sort of a way of relating. It's the objectification and the use of others in an inappropriate, hurtful way for the advantage of the person who's doing it. So wherever people can show up, they can behave narcissistic, including friendships, work, neighborhoods, any church. Even I've seen churches behave that way. A good question to be asking yourself is, how healthy are your relationships? And really look at all of them. Not just assess your partner, but assess your family, where you go to church, the doctor that you're seeing. Even be aware of clinicians. I hate to tell you, but I can think of right now names of clinicians who are very narcissistic, not always very ethical. Some of them actually did very good treatment, just not very likable people. But other clinicians were not only did they not do good treatment, but they're also unethical. So make sure that you assess all your relationships and make sure that they're healthy. When I got out of this narcissistic relationship, I did take a long, hard look at my connections and realize how many of them have been very narcissistic, very narcissistic.